I wandered for 3 years, fortunately picked up by the Empress to become a substitute bride princess. I married to become the crown princess. My mission was to maintain peace between the two countries. So even though the crown prince I married had a beloved, even though he humiliated and mistreated me, putting me in danger countless times, I remained calm. Because I never hoped to gain his love. But later, when my identity was exposed, the crown prince, who usually discarded me like an old shoe, carefully tugged at my sleeve and said in a trembling voice, "I don't care if you're a princess or anyone else, I just want you, just you to be with me. I don't care about anything else." Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. I am a princess. Fake. But I look very much like the princess, so I replaced her and married into Country J. Before the wedding, the princess's biological mother, the kind-hearted empress, asked me, "Do you resent this?" I said, "I don't mind." I saw her wipe the corner of her eye with a handkerchief, wanting to say something but stopping. Finally sighing lightly without saying anything. Then, I was carried in a bright red sedan chair to Country J. The person I married was the Crown Prince of Country J. He is a capable person, with great military achievements, even I know that. But he also has many bad reputations, which I also know. For example, he likes the second lady of the Prime Minister's residence. But she married and became his sister-in-law, yet he still likes her. To put it nicely, it's called devoted. To put it harshly, it's incorrigible, against ethics. Others scold him, he doesn't care. He doesn't like me, I don't care either. At the grand wedding ceremony, when he held my hand to worship the gods, I saw his face cold as ice, full of disgust. At that moment, I knew he hated me, even though we had never met before. But the level of discomfort I caused him probably ranked high. Yet he still made a vow before the gods to stay with me for life. It seems the gods are not effective, as they did not send down lightning to strike this insincere person dead. On the wedding night, he lifted my veil and silently handed me a cup of wedding wine. He was rude, like kicking a bun to a stray cat or dog. The wine swirled in the cup, spilling some on my wedding dress. This was disrespectful, but I didn't know if I should be angry. If it were the princess, she should be angry, right? But now, being on his turf, what right do I have to be angry? So I took the cup, looked at him, symbolically tapped the rim of his cup. Then tilted the cup and spilled it all on the ground. He frowned, "What are you doing?" I remained calm, my hand shook. He seemed displeased, expressing his dissatisfaction with my actions with a cold snort. Indeed, I should have been angry earlier. The wedding night ended unhappily, he pushed the door and left, not knowing where he went. I extinguished the red candles alone, took off the gold hairpin and jade crown, and slept with my clothes on. This was the first day of my marriage to Shinemo. The next morning, people from the palace came into my room and searched around the bed for a long time before coming out with a dejected look on their faces. I asked them what was wrong, and they said there was no blood on the bed sheets. So they couldn't report back to the palace. Just then, Shinemo returned. Seeing the situation, he stood leisurely by the door, watching me with a rather schadenfreude expression. His mocking gaze seemed to be waiting to see me make a fool of myself. I got up, took a hairpin from my head, and without hesitation, stabbed it into my finger. Blood gushed out, and I wiped it on the cloth. I handed the cloth to the palace maid. "Here, will this do?" She seemed to have never seen such a response before and awkwardly took it, then tossed the question back to me. "Will this work?" I said, "Either way, it's just a needle prick, so let's leave it at that." Upon hearing this, the crown prince's face suddenly darkened. He looked like he wanted to hit me but held back due to his status, snorted coldly with disgust, and left with a flick of his sleeve. He must be extremely annoyed with me. Even so, he still had to accompany me to the palace to meet the emperor and empress. We sat there, wearing similar fake smiles, responding to the emperor and empress's words in harmony. We appeared to be a loving couple who had just spent a harmonious night together. But as soon as we left the palace, he quickly let go of my hand, which he had reluctantly held earlier. The crown princess has quite the acting skills. The comment was ambiguous, so I assumed he was complimenting me and replied politely. The crown prince is quite skilled too. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. "You really are unlikable." I said, "Indeed." His steps suddenly paused, and he turned back to look at me suspiciously, as if surprised by my response. We stared at each other, and I thought he hadn't heard me, so I repeated, "Indeed, I am unlikable. I am someone even fate doesn't want." If I hadn't been picked up by the palace steward after not freezing to death by the city wall, I wouldn't have been seen by the empress, and I certainly wouldn't have married in place of the princess. The Emperor of Country Q instructed me to keep these matters to myself. If I uttered a single word, my life would be in danger, and Country Q might face the disaster of being annihilated. As I pondered, I looked up to find Shinemo had disappeared, along with the carriage. "Where's the carriage?" I asked. His guard replied, "His Highness said you just arrived in Country J, and you should explore more. He went back first and told you to walk back." The guard hesitated, clearly indicating Shinemo was being inconsiderate. My maid Chui Chui, who came with me as part of my dowry, was furious and immediately wanted to send for a carriage. I stopped her, saying, "It's fine, let's walk." Having escaped for 300 miles, this was just 2 streets away, and it wouldn't take half an hour to reach. But I didn't take the shortcut. Instead, I walked through the busiest and most prosperous street in the royal city of Country J. How bustling was it! I hadn't walked far before I encountered a group of people fighting. I saw a scholar in white being pushed and thrown out the door, and I instinctively reached out to steady him. The scholar, still shaken, politely nodded to me, "Miss, you have great strength." Moments later, no fewer than 7 or 8 people rushed out from inside, all dressed identically to the scholar. Seeing me shield him, they mistook me for being with him and prepared to fight us both. Heaven help me, I hadn't intended to help him. I glanced at the group of scholars, who looked like a bunch of show-offs, and sneered inwardly. I could probably slap 3 of them to death. But before leaving, the Emperor of Country Q had instructed me to be cautious and not cause trouble. So I thought for a moment, and before their fists could land, I turned and lay straight on the ground. Then I heard Chui Chui scream beside me, "Oh no, the crown princess has fainted." And so I was carried back to the crown prince's residence. Under Shinmo's gaze, which was 3 parts puzzled and 7 parts angry, I slowly opened my eyes on the bed. "What happened to you?" I propped myself up and casually said, "I don't know, maybe heat stroke." After speaking, a cold wind blew, and I pulled my cloak tighter, shamelessly shrinking back into bed without blushing. Shinemo could tell I was lying, so he retorted, "You should take care of yourself. Next month, there's a hunt at suburb. Be careful not to get bitten by wild animals." The next day, Shinemo was scolded by the emperor for leaving me on the street, causing me to faint and tarnishing the royal family's reputation. He was very upset, saying I deliberately took the long way to show off. I scratched my head, thinking, he actually figured it out. As a result, Shinemo disliked me even more. The day for hunting had arrived. The autumn wind was brisk, and Shinemo was dressed in a dark, fitted outfit, with his black hair tied with a jade band, raising his chin on horseback, looking quite striking. Not far away were Prince Lin and his wife. The elegant gentleman and the captivating beauty rode together. Even the passing ants would marvel at them as a perfect couple. I stood beneath Shinmo's horse, feeling that he was grinding his teeth in frustration. Indeed, that Prince Lin's wife was his dream girl, the unattainable love he yearned for. I had no intention of getting caught in their love triangle, so I lifted my skirt, intending to slip away, but Shinemo grabbed me and pulled me up to sit in front of him. I asked, "Don't you think it's crowded?" Shinemo squinted, speaking irritably, "What, do you think you can ride a horse?" I shook my head, "No." Upon hearing this, he seemed to have caught onto something, suddenly laughing. "I've heard Country Q women are delicate, didn't expect they couldn't even ride a horse." Indeed, no one had ever taught me. On the road fleeing famine, the horses I encountered were all eaten by me. Prince Lin and Princess Lin galloped away, and Shinemo, unwilling to be outdone, chased after them with me. I understood, he really wanted to show his presence in front of his unattainable love, but couldn't bring himself to approach directly. So he used me as a cover to make himself seem less pathetic. The journey was extremely bumpy, and I felt Shinemo was doing it on purpose, surely wanting to throw me off, but seeing me sitting steadily, he grew a bit suspicious. He asked, "You really can't ride a horse?" Before I could speak, I heard the distant laughter of Princess Lin. She sat on a pure white steed, smiling beautifully at the deer Prince Lin had hunted. No need to say, Shin Emo definitely couldn't sit still again. Sure enough, I felt a lightness behind me, and he leaped off the horse, running towards Princess Lin. Once again, I was left behind by him. The blazing sun was like a torch. I carefully jumped off the horse, found a patch of shade under a tree, and sat down to cool off. The rustling sound of the wind blowing through the leaves made me drowsy. And in a daze, I heard Shin Emo say something about competing with Prince Lin. And my eyelids grew heavy, falling asleep. In my dreams, I returned to those 3 tumultuous years, from the desolate city to the capital. Wandering for 3 springs and autumns, with a family of 5, eventually leaving only me. Those 3 years, I ate insects and ants, climbed cliffs, escaped from bandit dens, and arrived in the capital, narrowly surviving. I almost died in the capital's largest snowstorm. Fortunately, I was taken back by the people around the Empress of Country Q, thus saving my life. The Empress said I resembled the princess, was a blessed person, and kept me by her side for 2 whole years. Later, she asked if I was willing to go to Country J for a diplomatic marriage. I asked her why. She said, "So that no one in Country Q will be displaced like you." I didn't understand. Could a mere marriage agreement ensure peace for a country? But I agreed anyway. If it were truly as she said, that no one would be displaced like me, it would be wonderful. Cold dew hit my eyelids, and I awoke abruptly, finding the sky had darkened, with only a thin layer of golden light hanging on the mountain top. While Shin Emo and Prince Lin were long gone, all around was silent, and I realized I seemed to have lost my way back. The Empress of Country Q told me that once I married into Country J, I would never go hungry again. But it seems that's not entirely the case right now. As the sky darkened and I realized I couldn't return for the time being, I decided to find something to eat to fill my stomach. I chased a rabbit for 2 miles on an empty stomach before finally catching it. Just as I managed to start a fire and roast the rabbit, a wild boar suddenly appeared out of nowhere, overturned my fire pit, and ran off with my rabbit. Furious, I grabbed a torch that had rolled to the side and chased after it. To be honest, I didn't expect anyone else to appear in such a situation. But unexpectedly, Shin Emo came looking for me. When he called out to me, I was just plunging a dagger into the wild boar's neck, and the blood sprayed all over my face. I saw Shin Emo raise his bow and then lower it, standing there in shock. After a moment, he seemed to come to his senses, tossed aside the bow in his hand, and walked toward me. "Why did you run so far? Why didn't you wait where you were?" He asked me with a furrowed brow, but his voice was gentle. I wiped my face and said calmly, "I was hungry and needed to find something to eat." "You..." He suddenly choked up. "Sorry, I forgot you were still there." It was rare for him to apologize to me. "No matter," I said, "I'm doing just fine, aren't I?" He looked me over, seeing the various wounds and dust on me, and seemed to doubt the truth of my words. Exhausted, I collapsed to the ground, picked up the now cold roasted rabbit meat, and began to eat it in front of him. Shin Emo raised his hand and snatched the rabbit meat away. "Don't eat this, it's dirty now." I thought to myself, I've eaten much dirtier things before. "Your Highness," I said wearily, looking up at him. "I'm hungry, can't I eat something? Even if you dislike me, you can't just watch me starve to death." "I'm not." His voice softened. Let's go back and eat." I really didn't have the energy to argue with him anymore, so I had to compromise. "Let's go," I said. He helped me onto the horse, and this time his movements were much gentler than before. The horse ran fast, not as bumpy as before. I was exhausted and sleepy, wanting nothing more than to sleep, but Shin Emo kept talking to me. He said, "You seem quite skilled." I replied perfunctorily, "Average. I really didn't mean to leave you behind. I'm sorry for treating you poorly before." "No matter. I was just unhappy about the alliance between the 2 countries through marriage. Actually, I know it's not your fault, and I know you probably didn't want it either." Hearing this, I suddenly perked up and quickly refuted, "No, I quite wanted it." "What?" Shin Mo was extremely surprised. Marrying him could bring peace to both countries and stability to the people of Country Q. I said, marrying you was my choice. Shin Mo's arm around my side suddenly stiffened. After a moment, he spoke intermittently against the wind, then, I still won't like you. Ridiculous. After the hunting event, Shin Mo felt guilty and stopped making things difficult for me. Occasionally, we would bicker a bit, and the days passed by like this. As the year-end approached, a grand banquet was held in the palace, where royal relatives and nobles gathered. Unfortunately, Prince Lin and his wife were also present. Even more unfortunate was that their seats were directly opposite mine and Shin Mo's. Song Wei, the wife of Prince Lin, was still dressed elegantly and simply, like a fairy untouched by the mortal world amidst the opulent palace. She sat there uneasily, unsure of where to place her gaze. Probably because Shin Mo and I were staring at her intently. So, she picked up a cherry with her delicate hand and fed it to Prince Lin. Shin Mo immediately nudged me with his elbow, signaling me to feed him something as well. Boring. I thought it would be better to find something for him to do, lest he kept staring at his brother and sister-in-law. So, I fed him a pepper from the western regions. He chewed it unsuspectingly, and his whole body froze. His resentful gaze seemed like it could pierce me through. You just wait. I gently held his restless hand and whispered, Your Highness, drink more hot water. Shin Mo almost fainted from anger, glaring at me silently several times before finding an excuse to leave the table in a hurry. Not long after he left, a new group of dancers came to perform. But as they danced, one of the dancers suddenly pulled out a dagger from her sleeve and aimed straight at the emperor. Assassin! Protect His Majesty! Someone shouted, and the hall instantly fell into chaos. I took the opportunity to find a corner and hide. The emperor and empress were quickly protected by the guards who rushed in. Seeing their assassination attempt fail, the assassins grabbed Song Wei as a shield. And Prince Lin, holding a long sword, was momentarily unable to act. The assassin took a step, dragging Song Wei, and swiftly leaped onto the roof, escaping. Just when I thought it was over, my body suddenly felt light. And another accomplice of the assassins appeared and grabbed me too. I was struck on the back of the neck and immediately fainted. When I woke up again, Song Wei and I were tied together, with a sharp blade held against both our necks. Unable to struggle, I asked softly, What is going on? Song Wei's voice trembled slightly, but she tried to respond. I'm sorry, I've implicated you. She said something, but it felt like she said nothing at all. The assassin holding the knife to my neck seemed to be negotiating with Shin Mo. I saw him standing not far away, holding a sword with a cold expression. His eagle-like gaze fixed on Song Wei. Your Highness, if you open the city gates and let one of us go, I'll release one of them. This assassin was foolish. Shin Mo wouldn't let them all escape. He needed to keep one to trace back to the mastermind. So, at most, he could only release one person. Release Song Wei, he answered almost without hesitation. An expected response. Upon hearing this, Song Wei, beside me, tensed up and turned her head away in shame. The assassin kept his word and immediately loosened Song Wei's ropes. The assassin holding her and the one holding me nodded to each other and quickly escaped using a hook rope. Now, it was just me and the other assassin left. The guards behind Shin Mo raised their bows and arrows, aiming directly at me. The assassin seemed to realize that Shin Mo had no intention of saving me and laughed mockingly. Oh dear, princess, it seems you and I will go to the underworld together. I never thought the rumors were true, that His Highness is interested in his sister-in-law, ha ha ha. He laughed maniacally, and Shin Mo's expression grew darker. You've got it wrong, I said. I won't die with you. The assassin suddenly froze, instinctively turning his head to look at me. I drew my hand from behind, gripping his knife. And with my other hand, I held a dagger and slashed at his forearm. There was never a one-for-one exchange. From the beginning, I knew no one would save me. So, I had to rely on myself. Taking advantage of his surprise, I kicked away his knife. He pulled out a sleeve sword in anger and attacked my face. I raised my bleeding hand to block, and an arrow flew from somewhere, piercing the assassin's sword, causing him to fall sideways to the ground. The guards rushed in and subdued the assassin. His head was pressed to the ground, yet he continued to babble. The dog crown prince disregards morality and covets his sister-in-law. Your Shin family will be in chaos, and country J will fall. His gaze suddenly turned to me, venomous and malicious. Your country Q relies on country J, and it will also, ah. Before he could finish, my dagger plunged into his palm, and I said, shut up. Country Q is very fine. When I grabbed the assassin's knife, my left hand bled profusely, leaving a long trail of blood on the bluestone pavement. Only now did I feel the pain. Shin-mo, whom I had completely forgotten about, walked heavily towards me. It was the first time I saw a look of fear on his face. He looked at me intensely, his throat moving, and after a long time, he said, I didn't mean to not save you. I tore a piece of cloth from my skirt with my teeth and casually wrapped my hand, saying nonchalantly, well, thank you very much. No, he reached out as if to grab my wrist, but seeing the injury on my hand, he just held onto the edge of my clothes. Can you blame me, hit me, curse me, anything? I forced a smile and said, no need. Anyway, I never thought he would save me. I broke free from his hand, picked up the dagger I carried and tucked it back at my waist. Before leaving, I thought for a moment and then said, if your highness truly feels guilty towards me, then stop investigating me secretly. We are husband and wife. If you have doubts, just say it openly. Not long after, the news of the crown princess capturing the assassin with her bare hands spread like wildfire in the capital. Not only did I become famous among the people, but the Emperor of Country J also rewarded me with many gifts, allowing me to recuperate well in the Crown Prince's mansion. This matter was already over for me. But Shin-mo hadn't moved on. He had been acting strangely lately, often sending people to check on me, providing meals and supplements without fail, yet deliberately avoiding me, unwilling to meet me face to face. Chui didn't understand and asked me why. I smiled faintly. Why? Naturally, because he feels guilty. During my recovery, I received a secret letter from the royal family of Country Q. The letter said that the war at the northern border was urgent, and they had repeatedly sought help from Country J to no avail. The Empress of Country Q hoped I could persuade Shin-mo to lend a hand. They wanted me to whisper sweet nothings in his ear. They really overestimated me. I still went to find Shin-mo. I'm not very good at pleasing others, so I asked around about what Shin-mo liked. The nanny who had served him for a long time talked for a while, and finally concluded he likes Princess Lin, Song-wei. Song-wei was well-read, skilled in calligraphy and painting, proficient in music, able to sing and dance. These were precisely what I wasn't good at. During those 2 years in the palace of Country Q, I only learned the basic etiquette of a princess. As for music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, I was only superficially acquainted. So, I spent a lot of money to have someone bring me a piece of calligraphy from afar. The calligraphy wasn't from a famous artist, but it was very similar to Song-wei's handwriting. I searched for a long time before finding such a piece. The person I entrusted was the scholar I had saved by chance on the street that day. The scholar's name was Gu Nanfeng. He had passed the imperial examination with high honors and was now a court official. On the day he took office, he specially came to thank me for saving him. But he didn't take a single penny of the money I sent. He just said, being able to help your highness is my good fortune. I kept the calligraphy, planning to give it to Shin-mo on his birthday and plead with him. But unexpectedly, the gift sent by Prince Lin's mansion that day was also Song-wei's calligraphy. That night, after the banquet ended, Shin-mo, in a drunken haze, opened the gift from Prince Lin's mansion and then unfolded my piece of calligraphy. He was stunned for a moment, then looked up and sneered. What are you doing? Trying to imitate someone else? I was also stunned, thinking how could it be such a coincidence? If it were any other time, I might have nodded and walked away. But now that I needed his help, I had to say something nice. I just thought you would be happy. This was the nicest thing I could think of. You want to make me happy, yet you give me someone else's thing? He narrowed his long phoenix eyes, casually picking up the calligraphy I sent. Rip. The thin rice paper was torn to shreds by him. You want me to help you settle the war in Country Q's northern border, right? He saw through my intentions, lazily leaning against the desk. Such a big matter, you should show some sincerity. I asked, what do you want? He casually asked back, the most sincere, what can you offer? I thought for a moment and said, my life. He suddenly chuckled, probably thinking I was talking nonsense. All right, then give it to me. Just in time, I recently got a precious sword, and I can't find good blood to sharpen it. Why don't you try it? Before he finished speaking, I had already taken out the dagger from my waist, pressing it against my neck where there was a shallow scar left by the assassin that day. All right, I said without hesitation, looking at him steadily. Then you must keep your word. My hand holding the knife moved slightly, the dagger barely touched the skin before Shinemo grabbed my wrist. Are you crazy? He breathed heavily. Are you serious? Heh. I bet right. Shinemo, he feels guilty towards me. Isn't this what you wanted? I looked at him blankly. This is indeed the most sincere thing I can give. You know, whether I give calligraphy, sing and dance, or embroider, to you, isn't it all just a poor imitation? He stared at me, speechless. I continued, you are right, Country Q is a small place. It can't produce strong soldiers or generals, nor can it produce a princess who excels in everything. But I'm willing to give you my life, this is my only and greatest sincerity. For the war in Country Q, you're willing to do this? When he asked me, there was a hint of unexpected hope in Shinmo's eyes. I should answer this carefully. I said, also because of you. Upon hearing this, Shinmo's ears turned red, like a cooked shrimp, stuttering for a moment. You talk nonsense. I'm not talking nonsense. Shut up. He turned away, not looking at me, pointed at the door and said loudly, get out, don't let me see you again. It's over. Finally, I tried to show some goodwill, but it went wrong. This whole night of pretending seemed to be a complete failure. Shinemo said not to let him see me again, yet he blocked my door early the next morning. He said he had dispatched 2 elite troops to raid the northern barbarian camps and would soon drive them all away. I was quite surprised by this. Your goal has been achieved, he raised an eyebrow. Be good these days, don't wander around the streets, and don't attract any unsavory people. I wasn't sure if the unsavory people he mentioned referred to Gu Nanfeng. After all, he was the only person I had seen in recent days. But now the northern frontier's affairs still depended on him for help, I indeed should follow his lead. Thank you, I said, I will prepare a gift to thank His Highness the Crown Prince. Shinemo turned his head, glanced at me from the corner of his eye. No need, keep your thoughts to yourself, I don't need any gifts. It turns out, Shinmo's words should be taken oppositely. For instance, he didn't want to see me, but the next day he came looking for me. And he didn't want my gift, yet he sent people daily to urge me about the preparation of the gift. But I truly couldn't think of what to give. Gold, silver, jade, and stones are common things. He has seen far more than I have. Poetry, books, and paintings would be criticized as imitating others, which is indeed troubling. To cater to his tastes, in the half-year since marrying Shinemo, I have spent more effort understanding him for the first time. Only then did I realize that being a seemingly glorious crown prince is not so easy. The reason Shinemo was established as the crown prince, aside from his accomplishments in both civil and military fields, was largely because he is the only legitimate son of the empress. But in reality, in terms of talent, he is slightly inferior to the second prince, Prince Lin. Therefore, he has lived in Prince Lin's shadow since childhood. No matter how well he does, the emperor would compare him to Prince Lin, urging him to improve. Even if he achieved great military success, it was still not enough in the emperor's eyes. Since being established as crown prince at the age of 8, for 12 years, he has never received his father's approval. The old nanny told me about these matters with tears and emotion, constantly lamenting Shinmo's difficulties over the years. I just listened quietly, without saying a word. After all, I couldn't cry, because everything he despised was what I had longed for but couldn't obtain. I seem to know what gift to give now. But I need an opportunity. I once thought this opportunity might be during the Mid-Autumn Festival or the Emperor's birthday banquet. But I never expected it to be on an ordinary afternoon. At that time, Shinemo was suppressing a rebellion in the western frontier. And the empress, fearing I would be bored in the mansion, invited me to the palace for tea and conversation. But halfway through the tea, Song Wei stumbled in from outside the hall. She clutched her chest, still in shock, and said to the emperor and empress, "It's bad, Prince Lin plans to rebel." One wave had not settled before another arose. The mastermind behind the assassins had not been found, and a greater disaster emerged. Worse, before the emperor could prepare upon receiving the news, Prince Lin's army had already surrounded the palace. Although the emperor was old, he still had the demeanor of a ruler. He immediately summoned the remaining imperial guards and sent some to call for reinforcements. Meanwhile, the empress, Song Wei, and I were placed in the rear hall, waiting quietly for the outcome. The empress comforted Song Wei while reassuring me, "Don't be afraid, these traitors won't succeed." At such a time, I had no mood to listen to her, only asking myself, "Are there any generals in the capital now?" The empress shook her head, saying that due to recent wars and floods, all civil and military officials had been sent to various places, and there were few available people in the capital. The implication was that under the current circumstances, those available might have already been swayed by Prince Lin. It seems we have no choice but to fight to the end now. Ignoring the empress's dissuasion, I left the rear hall and went to the front hall to find the emperor. At this time, a light rain began to fall outside. He saw me carrying a sword, both shocked and puzzled. But there seemed to be no time to ask why I came, he just nodded and said a few good. I told him to send another team to find Minister Gu Nanfeng, he would have a way. The emperor hesitated, worried that the palace's manpower was insufficient to hold until reinforcements arrived. I said, "It will work." Gu Nanfeng arrived quickly, bringing the crucial item, fireworks. This was also what I had asked him to find earlier, originally intending to use fireworks as a gift for Shinmo. But I rejected the idea myself, so the large quantity of fireworks was stored at Gu Nanfeng's residence. "Your Highness, I brought the items and have arranged them properly." He looked at me calmly, without any fear on his face. "Let's wait here for the reinforcements." I said, "Minister Gu, thank you for trusting me, everyone will survive tonight. But I still have unfinished business." "What else is there? I can do it for your Highness." "No, you've done enough." I interrupted him, "This matter must be done by me. What Prince Lin seeks is nothing but patricide and usurpation." Night had fallen, and heavy rain poured down. The torches were extinguished by the rain, plunging the palace into endless darkness. Suddenly, clusters of fireworks blossomed from every corner of the palace. In an instant, it was as bright as daylight. As the light faded, arrows pierced through the rain curtain, precisely sealing the throats of the rebels rushing through the gates. In the heavy rain, fire could not burn, but fireworks could bloom. But this was not enough. The rebels' goal was the emperor's palace. They charged in. 1, 2. Facing the hall as dark as an abyss, they were momentarily at a loss. "Here," I said calmly from the shadows, dressed in dragon robes. Before they could react, I had sealed their throats with a dagger. Years ago, when I was kidnapped by mountain bandits. It was this ability to see in the dark that allowed me to escape from the bandit den. 3, 4. More people came, but they all feared the emperor, not daring to act rashly. That night, I didn't know how many times I swung my sword, how many people I killed. As the corpses of the imperial guards and rebels piled together, I dared not retreat a step. Behind me were the emperor and empress of country J, and the woman the crown prince loved most. They couldn't die. If they died, country J would change hands, and country Q would completely lose its dependency, only to be devoured by the surrounding barbarians. I don't know how many refugees struggling in the world like me would starve then. So I couldn't retreat a single step. This was the closest I felt to heaven. But it still didn't want to take me. When I was exhausted, covered in wounds, waiting for death, the reinforcements arrived. But it wasn't the nearby army that came. It was Shinemo, who was supposed to be far away suppressing the rebellion in the western frontier. At that time, the torrential rain had long since ceased. Shinemo kicked open the doors of the grand hall, and the firelight illuminated the entire palace. I was half kneeling amidst the mountain of corpses and sea of blood, meeting his gaze. "You've come." I left these words behind, finally unable to hold on, and collapsed. He was stunned for a moment, then rushed over without hesitation and held me in his arms. By then, I was extremely weak, my voice hoarse, emitting broken sounds. Your family are in the secret chamber. The Emperor, the Empress, and Song Wei. Shinmo's arms around me trembled, and suddenly a few cool droplets fell on the side of my neck. Was he crying? I wasn't sure, I didn't even have the strength to open my eyelids. You lunatic, he said hysterically, they are my family's, then what are you? I said, I am the person you hate. Lunatic. I lied to you. Shinmo brushed aside my scattered hair and lifted me horizontally, talking to me incessantly. You mustn't sleep, if you sleep, I will withdraw the reinforcements from the northern border. No, hearing this, I coughed violently a few times, you can't withdraw. All right, we won't withdraw, but you mustn't sleep, wait for the imperial physician to come. His steps became increasingly urgent, as if running faster than the gallant horses during the hunt that day. Wanji, survive, as long as you live, you can have anything. In the confusion of consciousness, I seemed to hear him calling my name. No, that didn't seem to be my name either. Yi Wanji was the princess's name. My name is Minji. According to Cui Cui, I am blessed with great fortune, no matter how great the calamity, I can pass through safely. After that night, Prince Lin was executed on the spot, and all his accomplices were detained, awaiting judgment. After I recovered, the emperor summoned me to the palace, saying I was the greatest hero in protecting him this time, and asked what reward I wanted. I stood firm, glanced at Shinmo beside me, and turned back to the emperor, saying, Your Majesty, I have no other requests, just one word from you. I said, Please, Your Majesty, touch the crown prince's head and say, You've done very well. Turning slightly, I met Shinmo's stunned gaze. Then, I mouthed softly, This is my gift to you. My long-planned, yet completely coincidental gift, giving him the gratitude he sought. The gift was light, just a word from the emperor. Yet it was heavy, so heavy that I almost exchanged my life for it. With Prince Lin's downfall, Song Wei's status became awkward. Although she was wife of Prince Lin, she was also the daughter of the Prime Minister, and had made significant contributions by reporting him. While she received no accolades, she was not punished either. Cui Cui was very worried, fearing that now that she had lost her husband, Shinmo would soon find an excuse to bring her into his residence, and we wouldn't have good days ahead. She suggested that instead of waiting for disaster, I should proactively ask Shinmo to marry her, thus showcasing my virtue. I pondered for a moment and thought that made sense. Since Shinmo would eventually marry her, I might as well act as a bridge and gain his favor, making it easier to ask him for help in the future. So, after a lunch one day, I brought up the matter with him. Contrary to my expectations of his ecstatic reaction, Shinmo's face quickly fell upon hearing my proposal. His sharp eyebrows knitted together, but he forced himself to calmly reject me. Impossible. I was surprised. You don't want to? After all, she was his long-desired white moonlight. Shinmo glanced at me and said, I don't want to. I was completely at a loss for what he intended to do. He said, I have no plans to take a concubine. If I commit to someone for life, it will definitely be that person. His fierce phoenix eyes suddenly softened, filled with immense tenderness. Yet, my palms began to sweat slightly, and I tentatively asked, Do you want to divorce me? To make room for Song Wei. Upon hearing this, Shinmo choked on his tea, slamming the cup heavily onto the table. He stared at me, his chest heaving, and after a moment, he angrily left behind a sentence. You wish. My conversations with Shinmo were always like this, brief and tense. Everyone said I was taciturn, and Shinmo wasn't a talkative person either. I didn't like to argue with people, and most of the time, Shinmo misunderstood my intentions and then got angry on his own. In the past, he called me ignorant, delusional, an imitator. Now it had become madwoman, heartless, meddlesome. So, when I vaguely heard him call me Wanji that day, I wondered if it was an illusion. Soon it was March 3rd, and the Empress organized a spring banquet in the palace. Nobles and their families all came to attend the banquet, especially those with unmarried children, who took advantage of this opportunity to bring them for a look. In essence, it was a matchmaking event. Beforehand, the young women would personally embroider sachets. And if they met a gentleman they fancied, they would give him a sachet to express their feelings. This was a custom of country J, which I was unaware of before. It wasn't until I saw Gu Nanfeng holding a string of colorful sachets that I realized the spring banquet had such a segment. Last time, during Prince Lin's rebellion, he entered the palace to save the emperor, which was considered a great achievement, and he was naturally promoted to minister. A young and talented man, handsome and dignified. He was indeed the top choice for marriage among the noble ladies in the capital. He saw me alone in the garden and came over to speak with me. "Your Highness, didn't you come with the crown prince?" I nodded. "He has other matters." In fact, when we arrived together, we happened to run into Songwei on the way. To avoid getting involved between the two of them, I found an excuse to slip away here. I looked at the sachets in his hand and smiled. Minister Gu is very popular. Gu Nanfeng shook his head and casually tucked the sachets into his sleeve. "These hold no special meaning to me." Before I could ask, he continued, "I already have someone in mind." I wasn't well versed in matters of love, so I politely nodded. "Then I hope you and your beloved will eventually be together." Upon hearing this, he unexpectedly let out a bitter laugh, his eyes filled with a touch of melancholy. He said, "No, I'm afraid I have no fate with her in this life, so I don't seek to be together forever, only that she will be well for the rest of her life." I nodded. "That is also good." The wind blew, and apricot blossoms fell from the trees, landing on Gu Nanfeng's temples. He pondered for a moment, then suddenly called me with great seriousness, "Your Highness, I." Ji. His words were interrupted by an angry voice. Initially, I didn't realize it was calling me until Shin Emo approached with a displeased expression and took my hand, making me aware that the emotionally charged Shi was addressing me. "Why are you here? You really made it difficult for me to find you." He used considerable force to grip my hand, and I struggled in vain, only to be pulled into his embrace. His phoenix eyes slightly widened, and he looked down at Gu Nanfeng with his chin raised, saying in a tone neither friendly nor hostile, "Minister Gu, what a coincidence." Gu Nanfeng bowed and nodded. "I pay my respects to the crown prince." Glancing at the sachets in Gu Nanfeng's sleeve, Shinemo chuckled twice. "Minister Gu has gained quite a lot today. You should carefully consider choosing a suitable lady as your wife when you return." He emphasized the word suitable heavily, with an ambiguous meaning. Then he turned to me with a smile. "Mother is looking for you, let's go quickly." I followed Shinemo for a while and realized that this wasn't the way to the Empress's palace. He pulled me into a deserted garden, closed the gate, and pressed me against a banyan tree. "Weren't you going to get a drink because you were thirsty?" he asked me in a deep voice. "I did," I replied, looking straight at him, neither blushing nor flustered. "And then you went to secretly meet Gu Nanfeng?" I corrected him. "It was a chance encounter." He sneered. "Really? With so many people around, you just happened to run into him? And on the street that day too? Isn't that too much of a coincidence?" "It was just a coincidence," I replied indifferently, thinking that saying another word to him was unnecessary. If the crown prince doesn't believe me, I have nothing more to say. For some reason, this sentence seemed to strike a nerve with Shinemo. He suddenly frowned and leaned in closer, saying, "Weren't you just talking happily with him? Why do you have nothing to say to me? We've been married for so long, and you haven't spoken that much to me." I said, "It's because the crown prince doesn't want to talk to me." I felt helpless about his way of turning the tables. Shinemo was momentarily speechless, wanting to say something, his ears turning red. After a moment of stalemate, he suddenly lowered his head, and his tone softened. "Gigi, are you blaming me? Blaming me for abandoning you time and again? I know, I'm a jerk. Let me apologize to you. You can stab me with a knife, for every wound you have, stab me that many times." "No," I interrupted his rambling gently, "I have never blamed you. Because I never expected to be chosen by you. But you, Crown Prince," I tilted my head, looking at him in confusion. "Earlier, I made an excuse to leave, thinking it would be convenient for you and Miss Song to talk. Why did you come looking for me? Aren't you happy to see Miss Song?" Shin Embo clearly didn't expect me to give such an answer. and the hand on my shoulder trembled uncontrollably, as if on the verge of collapse. "I'm not happy," he said through gritted teeth. "Why? Don't you like her?" I calmly asked back. He became more agitated, his hot breath spraying on the side of my neck. "Why? Don't you understand?" "I don't quite understand." I was even a bit baffled. "Damn it!" He suddenly cursed under his breath. I looked up and met his eyes, turbulent and filled with tears, like a dying beast struggling in vain. "Fine, I'll tell you why. Because I like you, I like you." I was stunned, reflexively puzzled. "What?" I said, "I like you." He repeated, then suddenly kissed me, catching me off guard. While grinding and biting, capturing the remaining air in my mouth. He squeezed out fragmented words by my lips, cursing. "Damn it, you lunatic. You're just taking revenge on me." After a long time, he finally released my lips, pulling me into his arms. Murmuring in a soft tone I had never heard before. "For all that happened before, I was wrong to you. Your hatred, your resentment, let me repay with my life. Can you not share your feelings for me with others?" Shinmo's cautious and aggrieved appearance left me completely bewildered. Not to mention why he suddenly liked me instead of Song-wei. Just the fact that he wants me to hate him seems absurd to me. Why would I hate him? As I said, I never had any expectations of him. So I won't hate him. Nor will I love him. That day was quite absurd, to say the least. After Shin-mo pinned me against a tree and kissed me repeatedly, my expression remained unchanged, yet his face was as red as if he'd applied a layer of rouge. I hadn't had the chance to say anything before he fled, as if he were the one being taken advantage of. I assumed he had regretted saying something wrong in the moment, and didn't seek him out for several days. Thus, Shin-mo couldn't sit still any longer. Without any apparent reason, he threw a tantrum and volunteered to the emperor to go to City L for disaster relief. He was gone for 2 months, and upon returning, he fell ill and is now recuperating in bed. Shin-mo has always been physically strong, but he fell ill after encountering a group of refugees from Country Q in City L. His guard specifically came to tell me this, hinting that I should visit him. This undoubtedly put me in a difficult position. Unable to resist the endless gossip from the people at the Crown Prince's residence, I had no choice but to go see him. At that time, Shin-mo was leaning weakly against the edge of the bed. His black hair scattered behind him, his face somewhat pale. It seemed this illness wasn't feigned. Seeing me arrive, a momentary joy flashed in his eyes, but then he turned his head away. "You actually have some conscience to come see me. Your guards said you were ill. Is it serious?" He snorted, "Ha, just a minor illness. Like you said, I won't die." "Oh," I placed the meal on the table and stood up. "In that case, Your Highness, take care and recover. I'll be leaving now." "How dare you," he suddenly shouted with full energy, then pretended to cough a few times. 2 months without seeing each other, and now I'm ill. Don't you care at all? Do you really not want to see me?" I replied indifferently. 1,000 words are not as practical as a few prescriptions from the imperial physician. When you see me, it often leads to anger, which isn't good for recovery. So it's better to see less of me. I turned around, my hand yet to touch the door, when a warm body suddenly pressed against me from behind. Shin-mo's long arms wrapped around me from behind. His thin lips pressed against my ear, speaking with a hint of grievance. "Don't leave. I miss you so much." I remained motionless, allowing him to hold me. Yet silent, listening to his hoarse voice intermittently rambling. "Do you know? In City L, I met your Country Q's general. He was exiled by the Country Q emperor and fled to City L. He told me something." Suddenly, an ominous feeling rose in my heart, so I tentatively asked, "What is it?" He said, "You're not the real princess, Yi Wanji." "How could that be?" I blurted out. Shin-mo suddenly slowed his voice, leisurely picked me up, and walked to his bed. "Yes, I thought at the time, how could that be?" But he spoke with such conviction, insisting I thoroughly investigate this matter. But I didn't. I sat by the river in City L thinking all night, and when a wave washed over me, I suddenly understood. He turned my chin, making me face him. His gaze filled with a spring-like tenderness that seemed to want to drown me in it. I don't care whether you're a princess or someone else. I just want you to be with me, and that's enough. Nothing else matters to me. Shinmo's words were quite moving, yet I kept my lips tightly sealed, not daring to make a move. He said, Gigi, tell me who you really are. As long as you tell the truth, even if you came to kill me, I would accept it gladly. Shinmo looked at me with great anticipation, hoping I would give him an answer. I don't know how long we were at an impasse, but I forced a smile. Your Highness, of course, I am Princess Yuanji. How could I possibly tell the truth? Who could tell how much of Shinmo's words were true or false? He had secretly investigated me before. And now with this commotion, it might be a trap to deceive me. If my identity as a substitute bride were exposed, Country Q would face the wrath of Country J's crown prince, a consequence no one could bear. I don't want to gamble, nor can I afford to. Upon hearing my response, the warmth in Shinmo's eyes cooled a bit, and he asked, Is it the truth? Naturally, it's the truth. All right. His smile completely disappeared, his head slightly lowered, seemingly struggling internally. He looked sad and in pain. After a while, he raised his head, moving closer to me with a hint of pleading, Kiss me. I turned my head away, avoiding his lips, and asked inappropriately, Did Miss Song reject you, Your Highness? That's why he settled for me, saying he liked me. This was the reasonable explanation I came to after thinking it over for a long time. There is no Miss Song, Shinmo hurriedly refuted, seemingly regretful and disappointed. I just wanted to surpass Prince Lin too much. I remained silent, looking at him without much emotion. Gigi, let's start over, shall we? I silently nodded, all right. He closed his eyes slightly, making a gesture for a kiss. Kiss me, will you? All right. A sleepless night. A few days later, I heard rumors. The group of refugees from Country Q had all been shot dead by Shinmo, not leaving a single survivor. There were occasional rumors in the capital that I was not the princess of Country Q, but an imposter. He traced the source, one person spoke, he killed one person, 2 people spread the word, he killed 2. Until no one in the capital dared to mention it again. I don't know why Shinmo did this, but it indirectly confirmed one thing, he knew I was not the real princess. I couldn't stay here any longer. Next month's festival, Shinmo would take over the duties of overseeing the country, handling affairs on behalf of the emperor. The current emperor was already old and frail, and Country J was practically Shinmo's now. On the grand and empty altar, Shinmo wore a high golden crown, looking noble and dignified, holding the national seal in his hand, as if he had obtained the entire world. Then, he held my hand and knelt between heaven and earth. We looked up at the vast sky, praying for divine protection. But the prayer originally meant to ask for the protection of Country J was followed by his addition. May we, the crown princess and I, be together for a lifetime. If I betray, may I not meet a good end. This was his unilateral vow. From beginning to end, I didn't say a word. It was then that I realized Shinmo might really have some feelings for me. But I couldn't respond. Because I don't love him. After the festival ended, on the way down the mountain, the crown princess's carriage lost control and fell into the raging river below the cliff. This was the death I chose for myself. It's all right, no body to be found. I thought, relying on Shinmo's affection wouldn't last long. When his love dissipated, my identity would become a weapon to kill me and Country Q. This time, it was Gu Nanfeng who helped me again. It was also the last time I troubled him. After crawling out of the river, he asked me where I would go next. I looked at the mountains shrouded in mist and shook my head. I don't know, but I will definitely leave here. Maybe settle in a corner of Country J, or maybe return to Country Q to continue wandering. That was how my life originally was. The days in Country J were just a dream. Before parting, Gu Nanfeng gave me a piece of jade, saying that if possible, come back to see him. I said I would. But it might be 10 years, or 20 years. Until heaven and earth have forgotten me, only then can I see the light again. I heard that after my death, Shinmo went into a frenzy. He searched along the river for several months, insisting on finding my corpse before he would stop. After months of unrest, sleepless nights, and falling seriously ill, he finally gave up on retrieving my body. Just when I thought everything had settled and life should return to normal, Shin Emo suddenly announced. Gu Nanfeng was imprisoned, and if I didn't appear, he would be executed next month. He knew I was faking my death. He used a method I couldn't ignore to force me to show myself. So, after only a few days of peace, I had to pack my bags and set off again. During these days, I lived with an old countrywoman whose husband and son had died in the war. Leaving her alone to make a living here. She asked me, "Where are you going?" I smiled, "To the capital." She sighed, "The capital is a place that eats people." I said, "It's okay, I have a tough life, heaven won't take me. But this time, I'm not sure, maybe this time heaven will take me?" Before leaving, I left the jade stone Gu Nanfeng gave me with the old woman, telling her that if she was ever in trouble, she could find Mr. Gu in the capital. When I arrived, the crown princess's residence was wide open. Yet no one was guarding it, as if inviting me into a trap. Sure enough, as soon as I stepped over the threshold, the door closed tightly. Then, I saw Shinemo in his python robe, walking out from the inner chamber at a leisurely pace. After half a year, his brows had gained a sinister look, and the way he looked at me seemed poisoned. He said, "You really didn't die." "Yes." He chuckled softly, still as sparing with words as ever. I said, "It was all my idea, release Mr. Gu." Shinmo's smiling expression suddenly cracked a little, looking down at me. "You value him so much. You're willing to come back from the dead for him? And what about me? When you left me, you were so carefree." I looked up at him blankly, without a trace of guilt in my heart. "Didn't your highness abandon me just as carelessly back then?" He suddenly fell silent. I continued, "I returned as your highness requested, so release Mr. Gu." His thin lips trembled, as if restraining his overwhelming anger. After a while, he said heavily, "Okay. Then you must not run away again." I replied, "Okay. Do you have any affection for me?" I lowered my eyes, wanting to lie and say yes, but it seemed I couldn't deceive his eyes, nor my own heart. I sighed and smiled bitterly, "No." Thus, I was placed under house arrest in the crown princess's residence. There was only a small courtyard for me to move around in. Chui Chui still served me, but she was no longer lively as before, only shedding tears as she watched my increasingly despondent appearance. "I don't like it here." All I initially sought was a peaceful life, a bit of hardship didn't matter. Later, I had to live for the people of Country Q. But now that my identity is exposed, who I am no longer matters, nor does living for anyone else. The only comforting news these days is that Gu Nanfeng was released. Shinemo came to see me, asking if I had let go a little in my heart. I looked away, not meeting his gaze, and said, "Thank you." Perhaps finally realizing my state was wrong, Shinemo began to grow anxious. First, he took me hunting in the countryside. We rode the same horse. When we reached a distant place, he suddenly got off the horse, stood below, and looked at me steadily, saying, "You go back, leave me here. From now on, I will only walk behind you, never leaving you again." Later, he held my personal dagger, pressing it against his chest, whispering in despair, "Give me a few stabs, just leave me one breath, don't let me not see you." I released the dagger, letting it fall to the ground with a thud. "There's no need," I said. "I think Shinmo's behavior can be understood as compensation for me. He wants me to take revenge on him, to gain a little solace. I know it's futile, and he knows it too. But he still tirelessly lowers himself in front of me, humbly pleasing, making himself neither human nor ghost. He said, even if I can't calm your anger, if I can make you pity me, that's good. But he still doesn't understand me enough. There are very few people worthy of my pity. I just want to leave." So I deliberately said bluntly, "I don't like you, so those past insults and trampling, I just took as the disdain of someone in power, so I didn't care much. But if we talk about affection, how can I pretend those things didn't happen? Your Highness hated me back then, that's the cause you sowed. My inability to like you now is the fruit of that cause. Some things cannot be compensated for, unless none of it ever happened." I spoke harsh words, yet he still wouldn't let me go. Just when I thought I would end my days in this place, I received terrible news: Chui Chui had died. One evening, she went to find Shinemo, and then took her own life in front of him. She was the only person who accompanied me from Country Q. Now she's gone. Among her belongings, I found a letter she left for me. In the letter, Chui Chui said she had long known that I wasn't a princess. It was the Empress of Country Q who told her, along with the tumultuous and difficult experiences I had been through. She is a person of misfortune, so take good care of her, the Empress had said. Chui Chui wrote that she had never met someone like me, who, despite living such a hard life, still chose to endure for the sake of the people of Country Q. I wasn't a princess, yet I had to bear the responsibilities of one. She felt it wasn't worth it for me, and said I should live for myself once. She told Shinemo everything about me, using her life to plead for my freedom. She had been timid since childhood, and this was the only brave act of her life. Miss Minji, she wrote in the letter, live well. A few days later, Shinemo came to see me. His expression was neither sad nor happy, he just looked at me steadily. He said, I didn't know you had such a past. What kind of past was he referring to? Was it the past where I ate insects and gnawed on tree bark to survive? Or the past where I was enslaved and beaten by bandits? Or the past where I wandered hundreds of miles, unable to find my family, nearly freezing to death outside the palace walls? Or perhaps, it was the past where I watched helplessly as my parents and siblings died of disease in the wilderness. I didn't know, so I simply nodded. Yes, that was my past. Such a tragic past, one that a lifetime could not heal. It's not that I can't forgive Shinemo for abandoning me, it's just that I can't reconcile with my own past, so how could I let go of everything and love someone else? Something was stuck in his throat, but he couldn't utter a word. After a while, he came over and held me tightly in his arms. Cold tears soaked my clothes. He cried. But I didn't know why. After a moment of silence, he said, Minji, I'm sorry. If only I could have met you a little earlier, much earlier. But unfortunately, you're right, unless none of this had ever happened. He paused, as if making a great decision. He said, go, live the life you want. Don't be a princess, don't be the crown princess, just be Minji. I was stunned, finding it hard to believe. Thank you, I said. This was the last thing I said to Shinemo. The only thing, a heartfelt thank you. I left the capital city and, after wandering around, returned to Country Q, where I built a house in the countryside, planted some fields, and raised some livestock. I was all alone. I could eat my fill, wear warm clothes, and most importantly, live freely as myself. I was content. The year after I left, I heard that the Emperor of Country J had passed away, and Crown Prince Shinemo ascended the throne, establishing eternal friendship and mutual exchange with the neighboring Country Q. After ascending the throne, he governed diligently and ruled the country with virtue, earning the reputation of a rare wise ruler. The only criticism was that his harem remained empty. No matter how the ministers advised him, from beginning to end, the vast harem only held the relics of the late crown princess. He said, I swore before the gods to be with her alone for a lifetime. If I break this vow, I shall not meet a good end. At the age of 30-something, Shinemo began to seek immortality and asked alchemists to refine elixirs. Others sought immortality for eternal life, but he sought reincarnation. He hoped to return to many years ago, back to when nothing had happened. But how could that be possible? Time passes, and stones do not move. No one can live forever, and no one can return to the past. No matter how many immortals he consulted, the result was always the same. Finally, at the age of 45, Shinemo fell ill from longing, and no medicine could cure him. He died in melancholy. A generation's wise ruler died young, leaving everyone sighing in regret. With no heirs, the throne was passed to the posthumous child of Prince Lin and Song Wei, assisted in ascension by Chancellor Gu Nanfeng. The late Emperor Shinemo was buried alongside the belongings of the late crown princess in the imperial tomb. Rumor had it that before Shinemo died, he had nothing around him but tightly held a rusty dagger. It was the only thing the late crown princess had left him. What he sought all his life, he never obtained in the end. Thus, he lived the rest of his life in regret. Gigi, in the next life, please let me meet you early. I will always walk behind you and never leave you again. Extra story. Gu Nanfeng was a person with a difficult life. The fortune teller said that in his lifetime, he would not encounter any benefactors to assist him. And whatever he wanted, he would have to rely on himself to obtain. In his childhood, his family fell into decline. And with no relatives or friends to turn to, he and his mother had to move to the countryside. After studying in the countryside for a few years, most of the teachers he followed were not truly talented or knowledgeable. So he relied entirely on his own understanding and effort to pass the imperial examinations up to the level of tribute student. When he arrived in the capital city, the candidates who participated in the palace examination with him were either rich or noble, with many having influential people to recommend them. There were very few candidates like him from humble backgrounds. Yet, he was proud and arrogant, unwilling to flatter and curry favor like others. His aloofness angered the son of the county governor, who said he would teach him a lesson. When he was being shoved out the door, about to hit his head on the threshold, he was saved by a girl with a cold demeanor. At that moment, Gu Nanfeng was so startled that he couldn't even say a nice word. And after a long pause, he managed to utter, "Miss, you have great strength." Later, at a banquet in the palace, he learned that the girl was actually the crown princess from Country Q. It was also much later that he realized, if it weren't for the crown princess's intervention, he wouldn't have caught the emperor's attention, and he wouldn't have had the chance to enter the emperor's eyes. The crown princess was the only benefactor he encountered in his life. The only benefactor who could help him. The crown princess was different from any other girl he had met. Born bright and captivating, yet always reticent and uninterested in everything around her. After he became an official, he finally found an opportunity to thank her. And the crown princess just nodded slightly and said, "You're welcome." Gu Nanfeng thought that, given the crown princess's indifferent nature, perhaps their acquaintance would end there. But he never expected that he would have the chance to help her again and again. Each time, he merely did his small part, and then watched as she soared like a phoenix, saving people from disaster. He watched the golden radiance surrounding her, and his heart beat stronger. But Gu Nanfeng did not consider this affection a shame. He even thought it was normal. Who wouldn't like a woman like the crown princess? But he liked the crown princess. And he felt sorry for the crown princess. He knew she didn't like staying in the crown prince's mansion. In other words, she probably didn't like staying by anyone's side. So, when she came to him and asked if he could help her escape, he agreed without hesitation. He had long guessed the outcome of his actions, but even if it meant death, he would still help her. The day he bid farewell to the crown princess, he learned her name, Minji. Minji, meaning compassion for all living beings. She was true to her name. Go far away," he murmured as he watched the crown princess's back. Not long after, the crown prince traced it back to him and imprisoned him, forcing the crown princess to show herself. The day the crown princess returned, Gu Nanfeng regretted it deeply. He regretted not ending his life in the prison early, regretted ignoring one thing. The crown princess, such a good person, how could she watch him die for her? Not long after, he was released. Completely unharmed, without a scratch. He knew it was the crown princess who exchanged herself for his freedom. Later, he heard about the crown princess's past from the mouths of refugees. Only then did he realize that the crown princess was not born with a compassionate heart. She was a deity born from the ruins of suffering. It shouldn't be like this. When he was at a loss, the crown princess's maid, Cui Cui, came to him. She asked if there was any way to let the crown princess leave. "The crown princess has suffered too much in this life," she said. "What can I do to let her leave?" At that moment, Gu Nanfeng's eyes flickered, and he said to the maid in an almost seductive manner, "I'm afraid it will take a life for a life." This was the only time in his otherwise kind life that he disregarded human life. Sure enough, the maid sought a chance for the crown princess with the most resolute and tragic method. To his regret, the crown princess left without saying goodbye to him. But then he thought, it's better not to say goodbye. Otherwise he might not be able to resist leaving with her. She surely wouldn't want that. Many years passed. Gu Nanfeng was appointed as the prime minister. Watched the crown prince become the emperor. and then watched the emperor spend his life trying to glimpse the shadow of the crown princess in time. At that time, he finally felt that this emperor, who always acted on his own, was actually a bit pitiful. After the emperor's death, he assisted the young emperor to ascend the throne, second only to the emperor, with no one able to look down on him or bully him anymore. One quiet afternoon, a young man came to visit him. In his hand was the jade stone he had given to the crown princess back then. He thought the young man probably wanted to use it to get a position. But unexpectedly, he was just there to return the jade stone. The young man said he was actually there to deliver a message. He said the owner of the jade stone told his foster mother to tell Gu Nanfeng, when she saw him, "Thank you." Gu Nanfeng held the jade stone and suddenly shed a tear. He murmured, "Minji, Minji." It seems that the fortune teller who predicted his fate was not entirely correct. In the end, he did meet his benefactor. When that benefactor was saving all living beings, she also saved him.